Can you tell me, Socrates, whether virtue is acquired by teaching or by practice? Or does virtue come to man by nature? Or something else?
I'd love to, Meno. But I don't even know what virtue is. So maybe you can help me. What is virtue exactly?
That is an easy question. Virtue, for a man, is being successful in society. Virtue for a woman is managing her household well. And there are different virtues for slaves, and for children. Virtue varies according to one's sex, age, and position in life.
Okay, but I want to know what virtue itself is. I don't just want examples of virtue. I want to know what it is. What do you think all these examples of virtue have in common?
Well, if you put the question that way, I would say that virtue is the desire for and the ability to attain what is good.
But having evil is misery, isn't it?
Yeah.
But no one wants to be miserable.
Right.
And good is the opposite of evil.
Sure, it is.
And misery is the opposite of happiness, and everyone desires happiness. So everyone desires good.
So it seems, Socrates.
But not everyone is virtuous. So virtue is not the desire to attain what is good.
Well then, I guess virtue is just the ability to attain what is good.
But can't people get good things by unjust means? I mean, don't wicked people get good things through dishonesty, theft, murder, and things like that?
They do.
So what does that tell us about virtue?
It tells us that virtue is the ability to get things justly, nobly, decently, wisely, or with any of the other virtues.
But then virtue is just having virtue, isn't it? So all you've done is tell me that virtuous people have virtue. You still have not told me what virtue is.
Well, good grief, Socrates, I'm all confused now. I've heard that you do this. You take away a guy's knowledge of something and make him really, really confused. Now you've done it to me.
Well, now you know what it's like to be me. I'm always confused myself. But let's keep searching for the truth, you and me. Now that we both know that we both don't know what virtue is, let's keep up the inquiry into virtue.
But how will you inquire, Socrates, into that which you do not know? What is it you are inquiring into? And how will you ever recognize the truth about it when you find it?
Meno, you are raising quite a paradox. You argue that we cannot seek knowledge about something we don't know. For we need to know something about it in order to know how to find it.
Yeah, that's it. That's a real problem.
And, in general, learning seems impossible, and so seeking knowledge seems futile. For either I know a thing or I don't know it. If I do know it, then I can't learn it, because I already know it. If I don't know it, then I can't learn it, because I don't know what it is I'm looking for knowledge about.
Well, how about it, Socrates? How can you solve this problem? What good is it looking for knowledge about virtue with you when looking for knowledge can never succeed?
Well, I don't think the argument is sound. I think we can still hope to get some benefit from looking for knowledge.
How?
I have heard things. Divine things.
What sort of divine things?
Things said by priests, and priestesses, and poets.
What did they say?
They say 3 things. First, they say that our souls are immortal. Second, they say that after we die we are reborn into a new life. Third, they say that the soul, since it has been born again many times, knows all things of this world and the next.
Okay.
This means that what we call learning is just recollection of what we already know. So it is possible to discover knowledge about virtue. We just have to find a way to remember it.
Socrates, do you really believe all that?
I cannot be certain, but I think it, or something like it, is likely to be true. At any rate, it is certainly a more useful idea than your idea that we can't obtain knowledge. This idea inspires us to seek for the truth. Anyway, I think you can find some evidence that this view is correct, and that learning is just recollection.
How is that?
Well, if you ask a person questions in the right way, he gives the true answer by himself, especially when he has a diagram to help him. Like that one time I talked about geometry with your slave.
I remember that.
He was uneducated, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
He had never studied any geometry, had he?
No, he hadn't.
And I only asked him questions, didn't I?
Right.
And at first he thought he knew the answers, but he didn't. But, while I was just asking him questions, he soon came to realize that he didn't know the answers. So he didn't have knowledge yet, but at least he knew that he didn't know. But I kept asking him questions, and soon he did know the answer. And he was able to answer a pretty difficult question in geometry, wasn't he?
He was.
Even though I never told him the answer, but only asked him questions.
Right.
So where did the knowledge come from?
That is hard to say.
It is easy to say. Where else did it come from, unless it was always inside him?
Yeah, you are probably right about that.
So we agreed that these things are probably true, and that discovering the truth is possible.
We are agreed.
Therefore, we should seek the truth.
We should?
Then, as we are agreed that a man should inquire about that which he does not know, shall you and I make an effort to inquire together into the nature of virtue?
Bring it on.
Well, here's something we might look at. I have always been attracted to the idea that virtue is knowledge.
Okay.
But if virtue is knowledge, then it is teachable, isn't it?
It must be.
But if virtue is teachable, then wouldn't the most virtuous men of Athens have taught it to their sons?
Yeah. They would.
Only they have not. You know, I can think of a number of good Athenian men who had sons who were not virtuous. Like Themistocles.
And Pericles, too.
Right. So if virtue can be taught, then they would have taught it to their sons. So virtue cannot be taught. So it isn't knowledge after all.
Well, then, if it isn't knowledge, then what is it? And how did anyone get to be virtuous in the first place? I mean, there are virtuous people, aren't there?
Well, maybe virtue isn't knowledge of the right way to live. But that does not mean a virtuous person does not have a true belief about the right way to live.
What do you mean?
I mean that knowledge isn't the same thing as true belief. Whatever I know is a true belief of mine, but not all true beliefs are knowledge.
Why not?
Because knowing is having a true belief, which is based on reason.
Okay.
But it seems to me that true belief is just as useful as knowledge. It is enough to live on.
So why do we want knowledge anyway?
A true belief may be just as useful as a piece of knowledge, but how can I be sure I will have true belief in the future if I don't have any knowledge?
So true belief is more stable when it is knowledge. It is more reliable.
Right. That's what I think, anyway.
Okay, so if virtue isn't knowledge, and some people have it, then they have true beliefs about what is the right way to live.
But their true beliefs aren't supported by reason. That's why they don't know how to teach virtue. They don't really know what it is.
Where did they get their true beliefs from then?
From the gods. That would be my guess, at any rate.
You're probably right about that, Socrates. But what if there was someone who had knowledge of virtue?
Then that person's virtue would be of a purer form than any virtue known to us. That would be a perfect virtue.
And you don't think anyone has this virtue?
I suspect, my dear Meno, that such knowledge belongs to God, and not to man.